ready to fight from within. You're about to go behind enemy lines.
Roger, 3-2. Goliath copies all. Go ahead. Target is surrounded by multiple firms entering what appears to be a residential area. Requesting permission to engage.
From the People's Republic of New York City, you're now going behind enemy lines with Gene Baradelli and Russ Gallo.
And you are now behind enemy lines. Hey there, how you doing, America? Gene Baradelli here with you. Glad you could be with us this evening to listen to the show. Whether you're listening to us on one of our rebroadcast outlets, if you're listening to us live on the internet, or if you're listening to us as a podcast, thanks for tuning in. Got a great show for you this week. Got a lot to talk about. Haven't been around in a while. Been extremely busy doing a lot of other things in life. Life keeps on going, even though this radio show sometimes doesn't. And we got a lot to catch up on. We got a lot to talk about, a lot to discuss. Every week we kind of try to think of a theme for the show. And it feels like the theme for this week's show, and because we haven't been around for a while, going back a couple of weeks as well, feels like the theme should be the reload. It seems like in every avenue of life, in the past couple of weeks at least, we have seen in our political lives, in our culture, in our social media lives, in media in general, we've seen this reload, this regrouping of efforts on the left to renew and re-argue the points that they so eloquently lost last time around in the presidential election. I mean, it's a case of self-importance, self-indulgence, and really self-destruction when you think about it. There's a lot going on. Politically speaking, let's go to the biggest news of the past couple of weeks, and that is the election of a new DNC chair. Yes, you won't have Debbie Wasserman Schultz or Donna Brazile to kick around anymore, folks. You got a new punching bag if you're on the right, and his name is Tom Perez. A little bit of a bio on Mr. Perez, Secretary Perez, as it were. Former Secretary of Labor under President Obama. Another one of these uber intellectuals from, Ivy League schools that you come to expect. A civil rights attorney, worked with Ted Kennedy as a special counselor to him. Worked under Janet Reno in the Department of Justice. Worked as the head of the Office of Civil Rights at the Department of Health and Human Services. The first Latino to be elected to the DNC as chair. That's an accomplishment. Listen, I don't want to denigrate the man's resume. He obviously has a solid resume. If you're a liberal, let's be honest. The man's accomplished. He's got an education. He's got a background in public service. And he also has an affinity for the DNC establishment. Let's thank the DNC for once again playing right into the hands of conservatives. The new chairman, Tom Perez, there are WikiLeaks out there, folks. I mean, you can't make this stuff up. You really can't do it. Tom Perez, there are WikiLeaks out there of him actually undermining Bernie Sanders in his campaign and trying to erode Latino support for Bernie Sanders. There's at least one email, I should say, between him and John Podesta congratulating Hillary Clinton on her victories in the primaries and how excited he is to go on Spanish-speaking television to talk about how, his AstroTurf, that Bernie Sanders has Latino support, trying to undercut Bernie Sanders and, I guess, in a sense, undercut the progressive left. Now, of course, with the coming election of this new DNC chair, you have, I guess, this idea of we need to unite and come together. And the reason why he's saying you need to unite and come together is because the party is so fractured right now. It's ridiculous. You have, I guess we'll call it the Sanders wing. We have the establishment. You have, any number of, fringe movements that are pervading the party right now. They're pervasive within the party. And that has caused the losing streak, the very long losing streak now, of different offices that culminated with the election of President Donald Trump. We saw so many losses at so many levels. The loss of the House of Representatives, the loss of the Senate, then the loss of the presidency. But we haven't even really talked about the loss of governor mansions across the country, how there's majority governors right now Republican, how there are so many states with Republican-led legislatures or split houses. I mean, the People's Republic of New York has a Democratic assembly and a coalition government run by the Republicans right now. DNC Chair Perez is inheriting a mess. How is he going to take back the presidency? How is he going to take back the House of Representatives with such an overwhelming margin right now? How is he going to take back a U.S. Senate when you have so many seats that are in states that flipped to Donald Trump up for grabs? It's going to be so many different challenges and so many different fronts to battle for this new incoming chair. And if that wasn't enough, there's a deputy DNC chair now, Congressman Keith Ellison, from Minnesota, very proud to be a practicing Muslim, Democrat from Minnesota, who narrowly lost. Now, Congressman Ellison is not a mainstream Democrat, I guess you would say. He didn't run as such. He ran on a reform platform. And I guess that makes Secretary Perez the reformist. I mean, after all, he did support Hillary Clinton. I guess he's not really the reformist. He's the mainstream guy. And the mainstream guy is in charge. And I don't know how that's going to sit with a lot of rank-and-file Democrats who want to see this giant shift further left that's going on within the rank-and-file. It's a very interesting dynamic to see right now. And I'm not sure how it's all going to coalesce together, or if it can coalesce together. I mean, we saw debates. The first time I can ever remember seeing debates for the Democratic National Committee on CNN. I mean, my goodness. I mean, CNN, folks, we'll get to CNN in a little bit, but come on. And to see the mentality of these debates of, opening up your mind and being exactly like the Democrats and, shunning all change and how this president is the worst thing in the world since slavery, apparently, or I don't even know what. But it's gotten to the point, folks, where the hyperbole has grown so far beyond the pale that the Democratic Party has almost become a parody of itself. Are there any adults left in the Democratic Party? I mean, we have Senator Chuck Schumer leading the minority in the Senate, being basically a stubborn ass and holding up the progress of the Trump administration by refusing stubbornly and in my opinion, almost illegally to hold up appointments. I mean, most of them are in now as we do this show. But we've seen the stubborn insolence now. And we're going to see it again with the appointment, which I believe is going to happen, of Justice Gorsuch to the Supreme Court. But we're seeing this mentality of stealing the seat and fighting on that basis alone when you have quotes circulating by Joe Biden back when he was, a senator, saying that when the political season starts, you don't put nominations up for the Supreme Court. And the hypocrisy pervades even further. It's gotten to the point where Democrats don't care about the business of the people, and they only care about the business of the Democratic Party. So it's going to be really interesting to see how Tom Perez deals with that whole situation. If he can deal with the situation, I might add. We're going to see what happens with that. But in talking about the reload, it seems like, everyone's gearing up for the next wave of Democratic hypocrisy and Democratic action against the still new, it's still a very new administration, folks. We're not even 2 months in. We're a little over a month in now. And to see the reload and the constant attack and constant struggle here between the two parties and the tensions growing and growing week after week, not only growing between Republicans and Democrats, but growing between the Trump administration and the mainstream media. My goodness, has this been a theme so far in 2017? And we've talked about it on the show before. Trump has declared war on media. Trump has decided to take his message directly to the people. He thinks that is the best way to conduct business. After all, won the campaign, and we've seen long press conferences, an 89-minute press conference where, to his credit, President Trump did not dodge one question. Answered them all. I mean, you can debate whether or not the answers were political answers or real answers or whatever you want to say, but he didn't back down from any media question. If anything, when there was a question that he disagreed with, he let people know that he was disagreeing with it. There were a couple of reporters there that I even saw go on Tucker Carlson's show and talk about how they were impressed how the president came back at their questions. It's really amazing to see a president have an antagonistic relationship with media. I think that makes for the best of both worlds. It keeps the president honest because he knows the media is always watching, and if he thinks that the media is against him, then great, he's going to be able to justify every single action he does. I want to see that. I know you want to see that. I want to see the media act like the media should and be accountable not only to the people who consume their product. And make no mistake, folks, media is a product now. It's not a public trust. Media is absolutely 100% a product that is to be bought and sold to you, the consumer. It's not a public trust. Be clear about that. But like any other product, you have to hold the manufacturer of that product accountable for what is done with that product. That's one of the main things that the public has been doing and should keep doing. But also, the media has a two-front war. You see, it's the consumer, and listen, they think they got us under control. And why wouldn't they think so? After all, they're the only game in town when it comes to what's on TV if you want news, unless you're going on the internet. And if you're listening to this show, you're probably a consumer that is disgruntled with media, especially mainstream media, and want to seek out outlets that you believe in, that are being honest with you. And listen, folks, just as an aside, I'm being honest with you right now. I'm politainment. When me and Russ are together and we're doing a show, we're politainment. We are not fair and balanced by any stretch of the imagination. We are not news by any stretch of the imagination. We're feature guys. We take stories and we put our opinion into it. We insert ourselves into the story. That's being as honest as I can with you about what this show and many other shows do. Bill O'Reilly's not a newsman. Sean Hannity's not a newsman. Rush Limbaugh is not a newsman. Dennis Prager is not a newsman. They're commentators. They come at news from a definite point of view. And the same thing on the other side. Rachel Maddow is not a news source. Chris Matthews is not a news source. Ed Schultz, I don't even know if Ed Schultz is still in media. I mean, has anybody seen him? Ed Schultz is not a news source. These are people who take news and view it from a skewed point of view. And skewed isn't bad. Skewed just means not balanced and neutral. But back to this war now. Donald Trump is tired of people consuming information through a filter. These partisan media filters. So he's taking it directly to you. We see the rallies that he's doing, much like his campaign rallies, in getting people behind him and his idea. This idea of fake news that Donald Trump has been talking about, at least my interpretation of it is that it's news from a vantage point. That the stories may or may not be true. They may be true. They may be some false and misleading elements in it. But the lens being viewed through by the consumer